I'm going to tell you a real story that I encountered. I was a teacher for 31 years, and I taught the Japanese in high school. I have many memorable students, but among them, there's one student that just strikes me. His name was Jacob. He was skinny, little, always smiling, and girls just chased after him. And he would just run, smiling, and he was so good at Japanese. I didn't teach him. I didn't have to, because he was so disciplined to self-study. And by the time when he was senior at high school, he was fluent in Japanese, which is not really common in high school. How it started was when he was 5th grade. There was an exchange program between my hometown in Japan and Des Moines, Iowa, where we are from. And he went to Japan and spent 2 weeks with a family of Mr. Masaki. We call him Masaki. And Masaki and Jacob struck very close. They became good friends. When he came back, Masaki said, "I'd like to study English. Would you teach me English while I can teach you Japanese?" So they started having a lunchtime language exchange. 5th grade Jacob and Masaki, who wasn't a father, who was already a father, and he hosted Jacob. And every lunchtime, Masaki would call Jacob, and then Jacob and Masaki will learn English and Japanese. That way, Jacob became really good at Japanese. And one time, I was thinking, Jacob's still just a senior in high school. So he challenged me to play a word game on computer. And I said, I can close my eyes and win. He won. I was shocked. And I thought, Japanese native person loses high school student? And he was that good. And he took a test at the end of 4th year. And then there's a test that if you are learning language, you take this test. And his results was 5 out of 5. Perfect. He went to college and graduated, and then he took a job, and we kind of separated. And one day, I got a call from him, and then he says, "Sensei," well, teacher in Japanese, "Sensei, I don't know why, but I cannot talk to Masaki. Would you find out? Would you call Japan and see what happened?" So I said, "Sure, I will." And I tried to find his company. He owned a company of transportation in Japan. So I called this company, and somebody answered. I said, "Oh, can I talk to Masaki? I am speaking for Jacob." Jacob stayed with Masaki for 2 weeks when he was 5th grade. And he said, "Oh, I cannot talk right now. Can you wait after work?" And I said, "Sure, yes." So after work in Japan time, I called him again, and he told me this story. Masaki and his wife were going to Tokyo on Friday night, dark, rainy night. And she had their pet, the little puppy dog, and the car broke down. So they stopped the car on the side of the street, and Masaki was going to call. So they stepped out with his wife and the puppy dog. At that moment, 18-wheelers ran over them. And instantly, they got killed, 3 of them. And he was the president of the company, but everybody had to scramble and maintain the company. It was busy and they could not talk to Jacob. So I had to tell that news to Jacob. And of course Jacob was very, very shocked. After that, he joined the military, and there he was stationed in Japan because of his language skills. And one day he called me again and said, "Sensei, I'm going to visit his graveyard. Would you help me find where he was buried?" And I said, "That's not possible. How can you know the graveyard for somebody I don't even know?" But miraculously, I had connections in Japan, so I was able to give him the address of this cemetery and the graveyard. Using the military day off, one day he went from Tokyo to the outskirts of Mount Fuji, and then he took a bus, trains, walk, whatever he did visit his graveyard. And then came back. I learned all this story about 3 years ago, and he had been already married and had a baby. And I think someday he will tell this story to his baby. And the baby will learn how Jacob learned Japanese.